Good afternoon. I am Zachary Lee Bolick, and I will be introducing my scrapbook, the History 1502 scrapbook, with mine being a little bit different from how you would usually see them, with mine being more closely resembling a recipe or a cookbook of different dishes from Muslim history, specifically from the Ottoman Empire. And I think it really hits home with how I like to look at not only this class's history, but all of history. With my look into history being a lot closer to rather than looking at people's accomplishments or civilization's accomplishments or the different people's abilities, I like to look in what they were able to do. I like to look into the actual people themselves and how they like to live, which I think helps inform this class in and of itself, because we did focus a lot on how these people would live. And I think one of the best ways to present this is through food, specifically famous dishes from these civilizations, with this be taking into account 5 different recipes from different parts of society and different parts of the Ottoman Empire, which is where I've mostly focused. When looking into history the way I do, it is important that I get a grasp of how these people lived. And these recipes are very informative on how these people lived, with my favorite being Sultan's Delight, with it being a higher class of recipe, usually saved for the Sultan, where the name comes from, Sultan's Delight. And it required several different ingredients to be traded across the area around the Muslims of the time. And it required a very highly trained person to make it for the Sultan. It has since become more mainstream and more people eat it and enjoy it, but back then it was very important that it was a high-class thing. But in looking at that one, we can also look at more lower-class foods and see that they are a lot more like locally grown and more simpler in making. And this allows you to see that while yes, their food can come from many different places through trade and through different experience of the chefs, it all boils down to the fact that they enjoyed and took pride in what they made. With Sultan's Delight being a really good example of it, but there being several other examples. And so I like to think that the potential audience that would enjoy this scrapbook are people that like to look at history and see that these people enjoyed their lives, or at least tried to enjoy their lives, and found some enjoyment throughout it, even if it was difficult and hard. So, this leads me into telling a story, or trying to using these artifacts to assemble a story of this class, and of my experience with it. Specifically, my main experience from this, what my big takeaway was, even though these people lived very different lives, they still struggled with the same things. They still struggled with their faith and everything. And I think that is incredibly important it's an incredibly important part of history in and of itself, including this history. And it's in looking at their recipes, you can see just how much they took pride in their culture and how much they enjoyed how they lived and what they did while living. And I think that is the biggest takeaway I can have from this class, that even though their lives may have been harder at the time, they still found joy and found enjoyment in their life, with only one example just being through their food. And the next should be what the key themes or takeaways I would like my audience to take away from this. And I think I want my main theme and takeaway to be what my main takeaway from the class was. Even though your life may be hard, and even though these people's life were hard, they still found enjoyment in making these stuff and making these food. And I found enjoyment in looking into them, and it sparked a new fire in me about this time in history, because it allowed me to see into how these people lived and just gave me a glimpse of what it was like to be them of this time. And I think that's important for anyone looking into history and people who enjoy history to look at. It is important for you to be able to look away from all their achievements, all their successes, all their fails, and just be able to look at them as individuals or as a group of people and say, at this time when this food, as an example, when this food was created, they were doing this not for the need to survive, because yes, they could have easily just survived off food, off of just eating meat by itself and then eating bread and then eating grain, just all off each other, but instead they combined it all and used that to create a beautiful dish that they could enjoy and have pride in. I think that is the most important part of looking into history and my biggest takeaway from this class. So I would like to thank you for looking at my scrapbook. Have a nice day.